So before I came back on November 1st, I had a dream in the middle of the night that my office was empty. And I wondered when I woke up, have I changed so much? What has changed here? What stories have I missed? The children are taller. There are people who I haven't even met yet. And it is true that we change as time goes on. But there are things that remain the same in Unitarian Universalist communities and people who care and who are people of action. And what doesn't change is love and welcome and sitting with, being with, witnessing to, listening deeply, being present for, and sometimes kicking ass when we need to do it. Because showing up in difficult times is hard. There are times when we need to sit down and listen. There are times when we need to hold a friend's hand who is scared. And there are times when we need to line up and march. There are times when we need to write letters, bring people to witness, and to show up. And friends, we're heading into those times. And some of us are worried for our rights, for the rights of our friends, for the marginalized. And some of us know that there have been hard times before, and there may be hard times again. What are the things that we hold on to? What are the things that get us through that dark night of the soul, as Martin Luther King Jr. said? When we worry or can't sleep or feel like we are alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. Because there is a love that abides in knowing that people have inherent worthiness. There is a love that abides when we know that it doesn't take a certain creed or doctrine or belief to be held in beloved community or to go to heaven or be saved or any of that jazz. Because we are people who care. It weighs. It's hard. Because we are people who care, we get up and we do things and we are with one another. And boy, howdy, it feels like we have landed in it again. I'm not going to say what we landed in, but it doesn't smell so good. We have the rise of Christian nationalism, targeted campaigns against transgender people, slurs against women, people of color, people in Puerto Rico. I can go on and on. There is rhetoric about the enemy within, more us versus them, marginalizing and othering. Some claims are so ridiculous, like fictional accounts of people eating dogs and cats that made a whole community suffer with threats and economic hardship. And even in the face of a Republican telling his fellow Republicans to shut up, they didn't. And the noise is going to get louder. And so what do we do when there's noise? We find places to make our voices stronger. We find allies. We show up and we care. And when we are feeling overwhelmed, we ask for help. And we let each other know that we're hurting or scared. Because we cannot be alone in the coming days. We need each other more than ever. And so in places like this, in places like Jonah, in places like UW-Eau Claire, or wherever you are, find your people, gather them together, and let's build coalition. Let us build a wall of love that is stronger than the noise. One of my favorite memories is, and I've said it here before, is when Westboro Baptist Church has their terrible signs, and when people gather together and sing louder than their shouts. And that's what we do, is we sing louder, we witness louder, and we don't let people do it alone. And the question is, how can we be present to ourselves and to one another? There is a power in belonging. And I'm not saying you have to join the UU club to belong. And we're not really a club, because let's face it, we're a bunch of cats who believe in different things. That's why we had a cat quilt at the auction. Ask Jane. No. We are all different people who have different beliefs, but we know that there is a power in being together and to holding each other. And it's a power in doing and being the good in the world. And some of the most ethical people I have met have been in halls like this, in places like this. And I know when I was 20 years old, or how old was I? I was 23 years old. I went to Atlanta, Georgia. I had probably $400 in my bank account. And I went to a little congregation called UU Metro Atlanta North and said, I have a concern. I need a place to live because I just got a job in Atlanta and I'm alone. And people were a little uncomfortable because I was asking a real question. And after the service, I just asked around. I said, hey, do you know places to rent? And this older woman who had retired and her husband had died had an extra room. She said, I'm going to take a chance on you. I'm going to rent you a room for $400. And that person made a difference for me. And I can think of all the times I showed up, when my children were teething or I didn't know how to potty train or whatever it was that was hard in the world. It's not always as challenging as these times, but it's being there for each other in small ways and big ways. And one of the powerful tools that I really grabbed onto during my sabbatical was spiritual practice. And when I say spiritual practice, I mean mindfulness. Practices of breathing, practices of not letting myself become my thoughts. I see the fear, I recognize the fear, I let it go. And so I'm going to invite you to think about your breath right now. Being present to your breath, breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. And it's amazing how something so simple, I can feel my shoulders drop, my anxiety drop. And it's those small ways that we can take care of each other. We can look out for each other. If you notice that somebody's going, and I watch the news, and you can feel and say, I'm here to listen to you. You could touch their hand or say, you want to have some coffee? Or that's our favorite thing. There are ways that we can listen to each other and be present. One of the children in our congregation called UUC the Rainbow Church because he saw all of the flags one day during Pride Month. Other people have called us the Love Congregation because we had, standing on the side of love, and now it's Side with Love, and love is all around us. In the wake of the stress of the 2024 election, we know that there are solid things we can count up on. You folks of conscience, will support one another in good and especially difficult times. I can't tell you how many people I saw doing things like door knocking, writing postcards, showing up to try and get people registered, saying, vote, 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 do the things you can do. And we draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on those foundations. And those have not gone away. We have the ability to fight for the things that matter, to be present to the things that matter. We have a UU value of equity that declares that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion, because we believe in love. And as a UU minister, I have that profound privilege to minister to strangers, sit with people who are struggling with sobriety, helping a transgender student who showed up in our town without a place to stay and was a transfer UU and just said, I didn't know who else to call but you guys. Sitting with people in grief, doing weddings. If you need weddings, talk to me. Talk to me. We are here for you because we don't care identity. We care about love. We care about that. And in Unitarian Universalism, we care about pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. And we believe in a free, responsible search. And that means we need a free press. That means we need democratic values. That means we need to hold people accountable to what they're saying. So when we hear lies, we call it out. If there are politicians who are not being truthful or are hurting people, we will try and show up and find those allies that can be there with us. So love, curiosity, respect. We need not think alike to love alike. We need not love alike to be held sacred, believed, and whole in this community. These are the values that are important to this nation, much less our community. Brene Brown is one of my favorite people I go to when I'm stressing. And so I look for her because she talks a lot about letting go of shame, letting go of the messages that are in the media, and really claiming self-worth. She said, we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be seen and known. And when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, and kindness and affection. Love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow. A connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, those are all damaging. A deep sense of loving and belonging is an irreducible need in everyone. And, we see that in hospitals. Little babies need touch. People who are isolated, we saw that during the pandemic, do not thrive as well. Loneliness is an epidemic. So with all that noise that might be in our heads or outside of us, I want us to think about this. There is more love somewhere. Feel free to join me. There is more love somewhere, and I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Let's do it one more time. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Our congregation in 2003 became a welcoming congregation. In 2024, we renewed that status. More than ever, being the Rainbow Church, being the welcoming congregation, being the love congregation is important. Because people are afraid. People feel in danger because of who they are. I am concerned about my children. I am concerned about all of our children. And yet, I know that we are going to get through this together. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be hurt and pain, as there has always been. And it doesn't mean that we don't need to keep on fighting or showing up. But I believe in this country. I believe in the people in this room, and I know that there are more people out there who need to show up, need to be there. And there are people who need help with reproductive rights. Our young women, our people with uteruses are going to need some help. Sacred worth, power, and bodily autonomy are being called to question. And what are we going to do? We're going to find that love somewhere. So I'm going to invite you to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. We are in that tension of needing to take deep care of ourselves. When I say deep care, I mean a fire hose of self-care. Hot baths, books, cozy mugs, hugs, whatever it takes. Because we need to take care of ourselves. We have to put on our own oxygen mask first. And then those around us need care and love. And so as our heart expands, kind of like the Grinch, and his heart expanded 3 times. And he gave lots of presents to the Yahoo Dory people. So, we're going to give our presence of attention, of activism, and of showing up when we're needed the most. And if you don't understand your worth, we're going to help you. Because each of you are worthy and loved. Each of you are holy, and I don't give a expletive. What anybody says from a pulpit anywhere in this nation, we will meet them. We will meet them with love, and we will show up, and we will not be quiet. We will not be quiet. Thank you. Unless we're being quiet and taking care of ourselves. So during my sabbatical, like I said, I focused a lot on spiritual practice, and I really made use of teachers and coaches. And one of the last places that I went, unfortunately, the hurricane hit my dad's home in Asheville, so I did not end up going to, and he's okay, and still has a place to live, but I did not go down to North Carolina. And so I was sitting there going, well, who do I know who's not in my church, who I can hang out with and be present in retreat? And so some of you might know Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe is a Tibetan Buddhist who is a Westerner, but became a Tibetan Buddhist 20 or 30 years ago, maybe even more time than that. But he has a retreat center up about an hour north. And so I messaged him. I saw he was doing a walk in the woods on his property. I'm really fascinated with old growth forest. And especially here in Wisconsin, there aren't that many old trees. And I don't know about you, but I really feel like trees are spiritual beings. When I touch a tree, I feel connected and grounded. And irregardless, forest bathing is great for your heart. And anyway, I said, I need to go do that walk. And I thought, well, maybe he knows of a place to stay near him. And I contacted him, and he said, you can stay at the bottom of our retreat center. I thought, how cool. I get to retreat with a monk. How nice. And so I slept underneath his retreat center, and he stayed at his house. And he said, you can go into the meditation center and walk in the trees. Do what you got to do. And we had some talks, and I'll talk more about that another time. But one of the things I was reminded of is the most basic of things that can get us through hard times, and that's if you look in your teal hymnal, there is a filled with loving kindness, number 1031, I believe. Is that right? Okay, thanks. But there is a beautiful song and prayer called Filled with Loving Kindness, and it's some expression of the Metta Sutta. And metta means loving kindness, and prayer is an expression of visualization and openness to loving kindness towards ourselves, towards another, and towards us all. In other words, it is a loving prayer of loving kindness, I'm just repeating myself, to the experience of all beings. And there was a Theravedic Buddhist expression about the Metta Sutta that said, as a mother would risk her life to protect her child, her only child, even so should one cultivate a limitless heart with regard to all beings. And that's a big measure. It takes a lot of practice, and we don't always get there. But it's a great focus, especially in times when I found it very hard to talk to people in my family who voted in ways that could harm my children. It made me very upset, as I know from other folks that felt that way or felt that they couldn't talk about politics or talk about the things that matter when people vote in a way that can be harmful. And so we go again to breath. The Metta Sutta is a prayer expressed for all beings as if we were the mother and all beings were our only child. That sounds sweet, and it can be. It can also be really hard. And so what I try and do is remember that we all need loving kindness. And so here's a suggestion as we move forward as a practice. Maybe you're sitting in your car, you just turned off the news and you're a little stressed, or maybe you're at home and your child annoys you. The practice of Metta Sutta can be very helpful. So you can find a quiet spot and maybe light a candle, a chalice. And you start with considering someone with whom you are troubled, concerned, angry, estranged from, for whom you are brokenhearted. And once you have decided that person, you can begin. But the first thing you start with is yourself. You start with yourself, just like I said. We have to put on our oxygen mask first. And then we move to the person who might give us a slight trouble. And if you look at the number 1031, you see, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well, and it goes on. And then it's, may you be filled with loving kindness. Maybe we think about someone who troubles us. And then collectively, we think of the may we be filled with loving kindness, because it takes all of us. We have to remind people of their basic goodness, because at the heart of things, even people we disagree with about politics or religion or whatever, we can find common ground sometimes, whether it's around having a garden, whether it's around schools, whether it's around something. Just trying to find something is the challenge. And it doesn't mean that we're quiet. It means that we try and sit in our loving kindness. Because I don't know about you, but the people who shout at the university at my child, and he's been so tempted to shout back. I did the same thing in my 20s. I shouted until I was hoarse in the face at this pastor who was saying all these horrible things to me. He wasn't really a pastor, but he was name calling. And then when I saw the witness of singing instead, loving kindness is where we transcend our anger, where we move ourselves into a way of being that is an example. And we're not going to always be there. There's going to be times when we're mad. That's okay. But if we can demonstrate the love that we want to see in the world, be the love that we want to see in the world, we really will be the love church, the love people. And it changes us. Compassion changes our brain. Mindfulness changes our brain. And we have so much of this noise that is competing with our own wellness, our own peace.